What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to a new album review. Today I'm going to be reviewing Logic, No Pressure. This is the latest album from Logic. If you've watched the album reviews for a while now, you kind of know that his Confessions of a Dangerous Mind album is kind of a meme on my channel at this point. I can say that this album I actually enjoyed a lot more than most of the projects that he's let out, because this album takes a little bit more of a different approach, as it's a lot more of what he used to do, which was what I was enjoying, like his Under Pressure EP and his Young Sinatra mixtapes. I was really enjoying those. But let's just kick off the album. First off, the title track, No Pressure. We start off with some familiar voices like Thalia, who, if you remember, she was on the Under Pressure intro, and once we switch, we move to Orson Welles introducing the album with some spiced up narration from a 1942 theater show called The Hitchhiker, with Logic cutting himself in during to introduce the album a little more. The song kind of gives us a look into Logic's life when he was living in Gaithersburg, Maryland, and the beat and flow of this song reminds me a lot of a Young Sinatra 3, which is one of my favorite Logic songs. So I do find that very interesting that he keeps going back on his old flows. And halfway through the song, for some reason, Solid Snake literally just randomly comes in and delivers a line that really doesn't have a reason to be there, but I think it's kind of enjoyable, the fact that Logic's taken a little bit more of a fun approach slash still wanting to make it a good album approach. There's also a line that I really like in this album in this song where he says, "Never had a car, that's why I hate the fucking bus. Took the 6-1 to Germantown, hear them guns bust. Call it static, my headphones on, it's Illmatic. On my Rosa Parks in the back, writing like B-Rabbit." See, this is the type of stuff I like to hear Logic do. Like, having a lot of great wordplay, and shows that he can still craft some pretty solid verses, which I find interesting because, like I say, Confessions of a Dangerous Mind is a meme on this channel at this point. I constantly refer to it as one of the worst albums I've ever heard, but I can't deny that Logic has some really solid projects under his belt, and this song is a pretty good opening for this pretty long album. So then we move to the next track, Hit My Line. It's basically his call to God, how he needs help fixing problems on Earth, kind of drawing from his past experiences, but also current problems he has. And this song I'm very mixed on, as I'm not really a fan of the pre-chorus, and the chorus is kind of meh to me. And the verse is alright, but I think that the highlight of the song is the beat and production of it, as it samples We Got Love by Sonny and Igor's Theme by Tyler the Creator, which, in my opinion, I think it's a big reason why this song is pretty enjoyable. Especially because Igor is actually my favorite Tyler album. Don't come at me, Flower Boy fans. And the production weirdly mixes a lot better than normal for Logic's voice, and halfway through we have almost an interlude which shows off the production a little bit more. And as this song concludes, Thalia kind of tells us that the album was written over the course of a week and in 4 sessions with Logic and no ID, which was the same thing for Confessions of a Dangerous Mind, might I add, but the difference is apparently it was perfected for a year, which I don't know what that means, but you can tell just by the production on this song alone that it was given a lot more time and given a lot more effort than his previous album. So then we move to GP4. This is actually the 4th installment of Logic's Growing Pains series that kind of gives you an insight into what is going on in his head at a moment in time, and how he discusses his adolescence again, which, in my opinion, I think that the 3rd installment is probably the best. Even though I do think that this is a pretty good track, but this song kind of falls away from the point just from the beginning with Logic sampling Outkast Elevators, which I find interesting because the song kind of has the same themes as Elevators, and I admire that he sticks to the point. But then he kind of talks about him sampling Dreamflower by Tarika Blue and talking to Erykah Badu, and then like switching to a skit where it just gives us some rehashes of lines already said, and it's very unnecessary. And then Thalia then finishes off the track saying it was the first time in 6 years that Logic and No ID have worked together. And it seems like Logic wanted to give us some more info about how the album was made with these fun facts. But, like, that's what interviews and Genius are for. I don't really need to, be given an explanation for how it was made. I would just rather listen and give my own opinions on it. So then we move to Celebration, featuring Silas. This song I do not enjoy. First off, the beat during the first verse is so fucking loud, especially with the synths. Like, Logic literally gets drowned out by the beat during the first part of the verse. And on this song, Logic enlists Maryland rapper Silas, who I had never heard before, but honestly he's probably the best part of the song with his feature. And the chorus is nothing special, pretty lazy honestly, Also, shout out to Silas for referring to Black Ops Zombies with his line, "My cousin showing me pushing weight, almost stabbed at the transit in the dead of the night, these fucking zombies, but that's really beyond me." And then with Thalia's fun fact of the day, they mercilessly played chess throughout the album's creation. Why do we need to know this? I could care less about what you did during it. I just would like to listen to a song, not watch a Matthew Santoro video. We then move to the next track called Open Mic / Aquarius 3. This song is something I like to hear. This is Logic basically giving us his thoughts during him writing this song. As I actually enjoy the concept of this a lot, as it reminds me of These Walls by Kendrick Lamar, where it kind of gives me this thought of someone going up to a microphone and basically expressing their lives and problems that have happened in their life. And I can also say that there is a lot of Kendrick influence on here because, you know, Logic has stated multiple times that Kendrick is one of his favorite artists and how he takes a lot of inspiration from him. But Logic doesn't really give us a story of his life here, but gives us a summary of experiences that makes him who he was. The first verse expresses his childhood where he saw domestic violence, racism, alcoholism, among other subjects. And then the second verse he talks about his son and how he's going to take care of him. Then the third verse is more of a reminiscence of his music and others he listened to. Then the final verse gives us some insight about how his son kind of gave him a new reason to be a better man. And this is kind of where we get this vision of why he's retiring, which I also need to mention before I conclude this song. This line, "Fuck what you heard my catalog, it ain't got no whack shit." Supermarket? Confessions of a Dangerous Mind? Need I say more? Then we move to Soul Food 2. This song is the second installment in Logic's Soul Food series, and this song is set up in the same way as Soul Food was, as it is a song that is split into two parts, but they kind of had the same story behind it, with just different situations and characters, as Logic mentions that all the people Logic once saw as idols are now associated with him, and how fans say that his old stuff is better than his new stuff, but let's be honest, it's kind of true. And this is a pretty long track on the album as well. And I'm very confused about this part, as it's sort of a come-up story, and then we switch to Logic's storyline off of The Incredible True Story, where characters Thomas and Kai are looking for the planet Paradise. I can't really give my insight on this because I never listened to that album, and I also don't understand the switch of Logic's wife being called a thought at the beginning of the second part, as she has nothing to do with The Incredible True Story, I don't think. So I feel like it's watching a series halfway through a season without seeing the previous episodes. I feel as if Logic could have split this into two songs and we would have had two pretty solid tracks. Then we move to Perfect, the shortest track on the album. This is the required turn-up song on every Logic album, as it samples Street Fighter 2 surprisingly, but even by trap standards, I don't really think this Logic's voice is made for trap, as Logic is, in all respect, too lyrical to make something like this work. Maybe if someone like Lil Uzi or maybe even like 2018 Lil Pump, but in all respect, no, this song ain't it. Then we move to Man I Is. This track is more of a beginning story of how Logic got into rap and all of the artists that shaped him to be the man that he is, paying tribute to several artists in the first verse, Antoine, Erica, and 3K, can't forget those ain't here today, R.I.P. JD and Pimp C, pay him respect so don't hold it against me. And I enjoy the beat as well, as it samples Outkast's Spotty Yachty Dopalicious, which adds this very soulful and calm beat, while Logic delivers some very choppy flows during the second verse, and just like Hit My Line, the best part is probably the production, as we hear in the outro a little bit more. And don't forget Thalia's fun fact, Cowboy Bebop, Trigun, and Samurai Champloo was playing during the making of this album. Honestly, this song is just something we have heard already on this album, so I wouldn't say this is too memorable of a song. We then move to my favorite track of the album, which is DadBod. This song is literally just about being a dad. Like, it's Logic talking about his life as a dad and a married man, but also a superstar, which I also find pretty funny because he even mentions the meme of Chance the Rapper loving his wife. And it's funny because this song is pretty ironic because it gives us more information and more background about how even though Logic is still a multi-platinum artist, he still has to do normal human things and normal dad stuff. Like, literally verse 3 is about him going to Target and getting groceries and being spotted by fans. I like that it's hilarious that the fact that we still see Logic as a human being despite his superstar status, and I like the very fun-loving vibe that this song gives. I can say that when it comes to songs, I like when you can actually see somebody's personality, especially for rappers, as they give you more of a insight into how they really are as a person. And this song gives the vibe of the equivalent of a dad joke. Like, it doesn't deliver the comedy that well, but you can't help but love it just because it's very innocent and you just love it nonetheless. Which then we move to 5 hooks, and just like Logic says, there are only 5 hooks on this album, which brings me back to his line in Open Mic. Like, he's aware of the criticisms of Confessions of a Dangerous Mind, so he knows what his fans want, so why mention all of your projects are amazing? This song gives Logic a chance to express his achievements, like how his first album he was just still a little lonely Maryland boy, and then how his first album bursted him onto the scene and made him a star, and how he also went to collaborating with artists like Wu-Tang and 2 Chainz. And it's kind of like how you look through a photo album looking back on your life before you moving on to bigger pictures. Same with Logic, as this album is his retirement, so he can go be a dad to his son. Who knows, we could see Logic come back one day. And I think Logic really matures about his career on this track, as he expresses his awareness of the albums and how his career has been. And also, Thalia this time actually doesn't give us a fun fact, but a quote actually. Living your life is exponentially different than just being alive. Very well said. We then move to Dark Place. This song kind of takes a more depressing tone as we move to a dark place, as Logic opens up about his mental health and how he's actually very hard on himself from hate he gets online, and that he may never reach the standard of what he used to have in his other works. And Logic basically just says that it's okay to be sad, and this is something that you can have 2 stances on. Either you can tell Logic to grow thicker skin and ignore negativity, but the fact is, people who suffer from low self-esteem take negativity to heart, and everything he is told is taken to heart as well. And he also uses an Alan Watts speech about how needing certain things are needed to be accepted by society, which I think he could be referring to the fact that men's mental health is not taken as seriously as it should be. And you guys know that I love when somebody opens up about the state of their health and their mental health, and Logic poetically expresses his, and I can't help but admire the fact that he brings awareness to the subject on his final project. We then move to A to Z. Logic teaches his son the alphabet on this track, as each of the bars on this song in part 1 actually hit on each letter in the alphabet, which with a lot of wordplay, he needs to use a different word for a letter or just straight say a letter. And I could appreciate the beat as it is very, very innocent and it could have nursery rhyme style to it, but I think there's a line that kind of rubbed me the wrong way where he says, switch up the rhythm on every track, flows I never double use, which is a fucking lie because some of the songs on this track literally reuse the same flows from Under Pressure. Hell, the whole album is a sequel to it. Like, what? And then part 2 of this song is an old recording of Logic from 2005, which was the first thing he ever recorded, and it gives us more of an adolescent feel to it. Like, seeing Logic teaching his son the ABCs as a 30-year-old dad, and then we switch to Logic being 15 years old as a young kid with a dream, as we kind of see like an insight into what his life was like back then and how it was now. So then we move to the standard Logic motivational track, Heard Him Say. Basically, he uses his story to give more inspiration to the listener, and it doesn't really give me a lot to mention because he just kind of keeps going on this track. Like, it just keeps dragging on, it doesn't really give it a chance to breathe. And it really got me bored during it. But interestingly, this is the end of No Pressure, but there's actually 2 more tracks on this album. As Thalia mentions, this is the Ultra 85 program, which was supposed to be Logic's final album, but he kind of scrapped that idea, and his final project is the conclusion to the incredible true story, and I'm gonna be very fucking lost. And then we move to Amen. This is a farewell track to the Rat Pack, and how he is grateful for his fan base being as loyal as they were, and how they were the reason he was able to be so successful, and how it sounds good in all retrospect, but the song isn't that good. The verses are alright, but what brings it down is his flows and the refrain, where he just repeats amen. It reminds me a lot of Flexecution, but not as good as Flexecution. And then we conclude the album with Obediently Yours. This concludes the album with another Orson Welles commentary track, which was about Isaac Woodard Jr., a black veteran who was beaten and blinded by a white police officer. Now, don't get me wrong, I support the Black Lives Matter protests, and considering the fact that Logic is biracial, don't forget that he's biracial, and that this album was released about a few months after the whole Black Lives Matter started getting more mainstream attention, this just seems so forced on this album, especially with the fact that this is not Logic's own thoughts or his own meaning. He basically just takes this commentary track and throws it on the album to conclude it. The track does mention how it paints a picture of how people still need to do more work for every one of us to be truly equal, which is in all good meaning, but it's not Logic's own thoughts. Like, it's not like Lil Baby with the bigger picture, because those are his own words and his own meaning. But Logic pretty much threw it on the album for no reason other than to get publicity and recognition for acknowledging the protests. Okay, so my final thoughts on this album. I would not say it's a great final album. If this was just a new Logic album, I would possibly say it's pretty passable. But I feel like my standards were a little bit higher, considering the fact that this is his final album, and I had so much to think about it. The production on the first half of this album was incredible. Now, the second half, it just kind of started the downward. There wasn't really a lot of production value. The only feature on this album actually outshines a lot of the other tracks on the album as well, which is never a good subject as well. I do admire that he kind of gives more of a look into his life after, before, and even during his rap career, which is also something I should mention about, you know, how it's his final track. It's him talking about his life, how much his fans and his music has impacted his life. There's a lot of good wordplay throughout these songs, and a lot of good metaphors and double entendres, but it seems as if it started to fizzle out right after Dark Place. There are a lot of throwbacks to Under Pressure on this album, which, in my opinion, is Logic's best album. The singing on this album was mediocre at best, and I don't think that this was a good album to retire on, but it's still a lot better than a lot of his recent works. So with that, I'm probably going to be giving this album
6 out of 10.
You know, that's just my opinion. How did you guys think about this album? Just let me know down in the comments, and I actually have a couple of more album reviews ready to post it pretty soon. So I hope you guys enjoyed, and I will talk to you all later.